The weather could be better, no doubt about that, but I'm supposed to be heading towards better weather. And what's the plan? I want to ride the Suzuki V-Strom 750 DE through Austria, Italy, France and Spain all the way to Barcelona. Once there, I'll be spending a few more days riding both on and off-road. I fitted the Conti TKC70, which is also very, very good for eating up the kilometers. And down there I'll swap the rear tire for the TKC70 Rocks because it offers a bit more grip on unpaved roads. But let's not waste time talking, let's get going. I've been here in Spain for a few days now. It took exactly 4 days to cover the 2,000 kilometers from Wiener Neustadt to Barcelona, taking a few detours along the way. Not huge detours, but a really good mix, pretty much everything you typically encounter on a trip. I covered a few hundred kilometers on motorways, had plenty of country roads, and also rode some absolutely amazing routes. The journey started in Wiener Neustadt, taking the S6, the Semmering Expressway, to get some distance under my belt. In Italy it was a mix of country roads and motorways, since the flatland roads weren't particularly exciting. But in France I really got my money's worth, especially in the Verdon Gorge. If you don't know the Verdon Gorge, it's an absolute must for a motorbike trip. This whole region is incredible. It ranks alongside the Tara Gorge in Montenegro, the Vikos Gorge in Greece, and maybe even the Karanli Canyon in Turkey as one of the largest gorges in Europe. Depending on how you measure, whether by width, depth or length, these four are among the most impressive. I got a bit carried away there and ended up spending almost an entire riding day, the third day, exploring, because the area is packed with amazing roads, almost all of them paved. And the best part was that on the 1st of March 2025, I practically had these roads to myself. There was barely any traffic, which is a huge contrast to summer, when you'll find plenty of motorhomes and other motorbikes on the road. So maybe not the best time to visit. I'd say the ideal window for the Verdon Gorge is spring, April, or maybe into May, or autumn around late September or October. That's when this region is at its best. That was my travel tip for this video. After that, I continued on to Spain, where I've been riding both on and off road for a few days now. And the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE has handled everything perfectly. That mix of different types of roads, no problem at all, just as I expected. I'm practically riding with the standard setup here, which means you've got the sturdy engine guard underneath, crash bars on the sides, a center stand, a standard and cruise control, which I did use a few times on the motorway. The only extras are this luggage set and heated grips. And I have to admit, the heated grips switch is quite small and a bit hidden. If you don't know where it is, you might struggle to find it. That's exactly what happened to me. When I set off in the coldest conditions, about the first 2 hours, riding in the rain at 5 degrees Celsius from Wiener Neustadt, I couldn't find the switch. I didn't stop to look for it, so I ended up freezing quite a bit. But at the first stop, I finally found it, and after that, everything was fine. The world was back in order. Heated grips are an absolute luxury at this time of year. Now, when I talk about the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE, this was actually the first modern Suzuki, or rather the first V-Strom to feature a 21-inch front wheel, since it came out a few months before the 800 DE. I don't immediately focus on that front wheel. We'll get to that later. What I really want to highlight first is the engine. Even in its Euro 5 Plus version, this 1037 cubic centimeter V-twin remains the heart of this bike. It puts a smile on your face every time. It's always present, powerful and bursting with character, something you don't find all that often in modern engines anymore. The gearbox is fantastic too. It delivers 107 horsepower, Even in the Euro 5 Plus version, gear changes are smooth, whether you're shifting with the clutch or using the standard Quickshifter, which works flawlessly. That's definitely worth some praise. Torque is exactly 100 Newton meters, but you can find all the details in other videos on our channel, including some from me. I was actually at the launch event in Greece almost exactly 2 years ago, where we covered everything in depth. This engine is simply made for an adventure bike. Whether you're riding solo or two up, it's got more than enough power. As for the DE version with the 21-inch front wheel, the advantages are pretty straightforward. When things get rough, when the terrain gets tougher, a 21-inch front wheel simply rolls over obstacles more smoothly than a 19-inch one. That said, to be fair, in terms of suspension travel, this isn't exactly a hardcore adventure bike. The front suspension has 170 millimeters of travel. The rear has 169 millimeters. The front is fully adjustable, while the rear offers preload and rebound adjustments. Not the most extensive setup, but then again, the bike is quite a hefty beast. The Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE weighs 252 kilograms, fully fueled and ready to ride. We put it on the 1000 PS scale, and without the panniers, but with the pannier racks, it weighed 259 kilograms. With the panniers, it was 270 kilograms. And that was still without my underwear packed. Those panniers were completely empty. So when you look at it like that, it's quite a hefty beast. You really need to be an experienced rider to handle it off-road, especially on rougher terrain like dirt tracks. But the bike itself is fully capable. It's just a well-balanced adventure tourer. A bike that manages to strike a balance between comfortable touring and still being able to handle tougher terrain. If I had to pick out some downsides, apart from the considerable weight, there aren't too many. But that's something everyone has to judge for themselves. You definitely feel the weight when maneuvering, though it's much less noticeable when riding. Still, it's undeniably a substantial machine. One small issue, the rubber inserts on the foot pegs are very slippery. The foot pegs themselves are big enough for riding while standing, and personally I always remove the rubber inserts anyway. Anyone who rides off-road regularly will probably do the same, but yesterday, for example, I was riding standing up in light rain and I slipped off the peg quite easily. So these rubber inserts are definitely not ideal if you frequently ride in all weather conditions while standing. The good news is they're easy to remove, and the foot pegs themselves are actually very good. The seat height is also fairly high at 880 millimeters. I'll demonstrate. At 1.75 meters, I can barely touch the ground with my toes. Naturally, the heavier and bulkier a bike is, the more careful you need to be. You can't just stop anywhere or turn around easily. This is something to keep in mind, especially off-road, where you don't always have flat ground to put your foot down. If the ground is uneven, you might find yourself stretching too far to reach the ground, which can be risky. If you're 1.80 meters or taller, you'll still need good riding skills to handle this bike confidently, simply because the seat is quite wide. As comfortable as the seat is for long distance touring, its wide build makes it feel even higher than the nominal 880 millimeters. Speaking of comfort, I didn't experience any discomfort even on long stretches. However, when it comes to long distance riding, the windscreen could be an issue. It's not the largest, and the one on the standard 1050 model is definitely more effective. At 1.75 meters, the wind protection was good enough for me, but I can imagine that taller riders, especially on the motorway, might not be entirely happy with it. That said, the side wind deflectors do a good job, so overall the wind protection is decent. One big question on any long trip is tire choice. I already mentioned at the start that I ran 2 different, or rather 1.5 different tires on this tour. I started off with the Conti TKC70, which Continental classifies as a 70/30 tire. Personally, I'd say it's a bit more road oriented than that, but for this model, Conti has also developed a dedicated rear tire, the TKC70 Rocks, which is at least a true 70/30 tire, if not even slightly more off-road focused. It still pairs with the same front tire, and as far as I know, this is the only tire model where you can combine one front tire with 2 different rear tires. If I look at the strengths and weaknesses of both rear tires, it's actually quite easy to explain and get straight to the point. You just have to look at the tread. On the standard TKC70, you've got a continuous tread band or a central rib, however you want to call it. And on the TKC70 Rocks, you've got an open tread pattern. that naturally means a lot more grip off-road and much better self-cleaning. So if I ride through muddier terrain, it doesn't clog up as quickly as the TKC70, but instead clears itself relatively fast. And I've also got more tread towards the outer edges. On the TKC70, the tread depth decreases towards the sides, making it more stable on the road. With the TKC70 rocks, I simply have better tracking, even on unpaved surfaces. But if I really think about where the actual advantages lie, I can ride gravel and a bit of mud with the TKC70, but I don't get the same level of stability as with the TKC70 rocks. On the other hand, the rocks is by no means much worse on the road than the TKC70. You'd really have to be someone who pushes the bike hard, rides quite sportily, to even notice the differences between the standard TKC70 and the TKC70 rocks on the rear wheel. The main argument for the TKC70, however, is definitely mileage. So I'd say if you place more importance on off-road performance, then you clearly have to go for the TKC70 rocks. If mileage is more of a priority, then the TKC70 is the better choice. But if it's just about better performance on the road, then you don't necessarily have to pick the TKC70. You can just as well go with the rocks because it grips wonderfully on tarmac. It's absolutely capable of handling the kind of riding most people do with an adventure bike. The key argument is that with the rocks, I simply have more reserves on unpaved terrain. Now, regarding electronics, off-road settings work a bit differently on Suzuki compared to other motorcycles or brands. Instead of predefined riding modes, you can adjust traction control, power delivery, and ABS individually. That's something we've covered before. But what I still want to highlight here is the gravel mode in the traction control system. Instead of just having level 1, 2 and 3 like on the DE, you also get a gravel mode. It works really well and is absolutely recommended for gravel riding. Of course, pro riders will probably turn traction control off completely, but this gravel mode allows for some slip on unpaved roads without the rear wheel immediately spinning out if you get a bit too aggressive on the throttle. So I can fully recommend it. I had it switched on multiple times on unpaved routes and it works brilliantly. Almost as important as the choice of bike on a trip is, of course, the choice of tires. And this combination of the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE together with the Conti TKC70 or even the TKC70 rocks, which I tested here on some dirt tracks and back roads, is an absolutely solid choice, or I would even say a highly recommended one. I really enjoyed this trip from the 1000 PS headquarters in Wiener Neustadt down to the 1000 PS winter base in Barcelona. If you liked this video, had fun watching it, or found some useful or interesting information, then do me, Suzuki and Conti a favor and give us a thumbs up. Drop a comment below and let me know which adventure bikes you prefer for trips like this. Maybe you've already ridden the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE or even have one at home. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the tires too. And most importantly, if you haven't done it yet, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell so you never miss a video like this again.